beginning with these two modes of immediate organization and control, namely organization and control in the workplace and in the community. One can imagine a network of workers' councils at a higher level, representation across a factory or across branches of industry or across crafts, and on to general assemblies of workers' councils that can be regional and national and international in character. And from another point of view, one can project a system of governance that involves local assemblies, again, federated regionally, dealing with regional issues, crossing crafts, industries, trades, and so on, and again, general at the level of the nation or beyond through federation and so on. Now, each of these, and exactly how these would develop and how they would interrelate and whether you need both of them or only one, well, these are matters over which anarchist theoreticians have debated, and many detailed proposals exist, and I don't feel competent to take a stand. In fact, I think these are questions that pretty much would have to be worked out.
But there would not, for example, be direct national elections and political parties organised from coast to coast, as it were, or from north to south in Britain to win those kind of elections? Would that? Because if there were, that would presumably create a kind of a central authority which would be equal to the idea of anarchism.
Right. No, the idea of anarchism is that delegation of authority is rather minimal. That is, participants at any one of these levels of government, representatives at any one of these levels of government, should be directly responsive to the organic community in which they live. And in fact, the optimal situation would be that participation in one of these levels of government should, on the one hand, be temporary, and even during the period when it's taking place, should be only partial. That is, the members of Workers' Council who are, for some period, actually functioning to make short-run decisions that other people don't have the time to make, should nevertheless be, in part, also continuing to do their work as part of the workplace or neighborhood community in which they belong. Now, as for political parties, my feeling is that an anarchist society would not forcefully prevent the political parties from arising. In fact, anarchism has always been based on the idea that any sort of Procrustean bed, any sort of system of norms that's imposed on social life will constrain and very much underestimate its energy and vitality, and that all sorts of new possibilities of voluntary organization may develop that we may not even think of today at a higher level of material and intellectual culture. But I think it is fair to say that insofar as political parties are felt to be necessary, anarchist organization of society will have failed. That is, it should be the case, I would think, that where there is direct participation in self-management, in economic and social affairs, then factions, conflicts, differences of interest and idea and opinion, which should be welcomed and cultivated, will be expressed at every one of these levels. Why they should fall into 2 or 3 or N political parties, I don't quite see. I think that the complexity of human interest and life that does not fall in that fashion. Parties represent basically class interests, or largely
classes
so.
Would not exist in.
And classes would have been eliminated or transcended in such a society.
One last question on the political organization. Is there not a danger that with this sort of hierarchical tier of assemblies and quasi-governmental structure, without direct elections, that the central body, or the body that is in some sense at the top of this pyramid, gets very remote from the people on the ground, and since it will have to have some powers, if it's going to deal with international affairs, for example, deal with other countries, and may even have to have control over armed forces and things like that, that it would be less democratically responsive than the existing regime?
Well, first of all, there would be direct elections under any, except the direct elections would be at every one of these levels. That is, as far as the lowest level is concerned. Say
the next level would then elect the level above that.
Now, the question is, I think it's a very important property of any libertarian society will be to prevent an evolution in the direction that you've described, which is a possible evolution, and one that institutions should be designed to abort, to prevent. And I think that that's entirely possible. I mean, I'm totally unpersuaded that participation in governance is a full-time job. I don't think it is. It may be in an irrational society where there are all sorts of problems that arise because of the irrational nature of institutions. But in a properly functioning advanced industrial society organized along libertarian lines, I would think that executing decisions taken by representative bodies is a part-time job which should be rotated throughout the community, and furthermore should be undertaken by people who are at all times continue to be participants in their own direct activity. Now, it's possible that it is necessary to have that governance is itself a function on a par with, say, steel production. If that turns out to be true, and I think that's a question of empirical fact that has to be determined, it can't be projected out of the mind, but if it turns out to be true, then it seems to me the natural suggestion is that governance should be organized industrially as simply another branch of industry. That is, the civil servants or others who are involved in this form of activity, taking it to be, by hypothesis now, a meaningful and useful form of activity, that they themselves should be organized as simply one of the branches of industry with their own workers' councils and their own self-governance and their own participation in broader assemblies. Now, I might say that in the spontaneous development of workers' councils that has occasionally appeared here and there in the world, well, for example, in the Hungarian Revolution of 1956, that's pretty much what happened. There was, as I recall, a workers' council of state employees, I forget what they called themselves, civil servants or something like that, who were simply organized along industrial lines as another branch of industry. That's perfectly possible. And it should be, or it could be, a barrier against the creation of the kind of remote coercive bureaucracy that anarchists, of course, fear.
Mr. Chomsky, I think that might be a convenient place to interrupt ourselves in a moment. I'd like to come back and press you a little further on how that would work out, for example, in relation to the control of the Pentagon and the defense organization in societies, if there would be any. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. Well, in part one, I've been talking to Professor Noam Chomsky of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology about libertarian socialism or anarchism as a political theory and as a possible alternative to our existing liberal democracies, and towards the end he was describing the political constitution of an anarchist society. Professor Chomsky, I'd like to press you a little bit further about the way in which effective democratic control would be achieved consistently with discharging the necessary functions of such a society. If you suppose that there would continue to be a need for self-defense on quite a sophisticated level, I don't quite see from your description how you would achieve effective control by the system of part-time representative councils at various levels from the bottom up over an organization as powerful and as necessarily technically sophisticated as, for example, the Pentagon, which is a body with which you've had quite a long record of conflict over the Vietnam War and other matters in recent years. Can you describe how the Pentagon could, at one and the same time, be efficient as a defense organization and nonetheless properly responsive to democratic control within the United States if it was an anarchist society?